Hello and welcome to another Doctor's System 1 video, and today I'm doing a video on whether or not the 8th Doctor should have been in the Time War. Now, there seems to be this pocket of the Doctor Who community that seems to think that he should have, other people not. I mean, it's an interesting discussion to have and online and that, and it seems to be a thing that, yeah, a lot of fans seem to, quite a few fans want, some fans don't, and I just thought I'd throw my ring into the hat, so to speak, and I'll say what I think. And I think, well, personally, I don't think he should have, but I can see the potential, and that it could have been good, but it could have also been not so good. And I mean, considering, I think if we hadn't have got Night of the Doctor, I'd have loved to have seen Mr. Paul McGann in the 50th anniversary. Now people are like, oh, well, he should have been in the 50th anniversary, he should have been in Day of the Doctor, and all that, you know, but it's like, at the end of the day though, he still got a mini sort of prequel, you know, like, and yeah, Tom Baker was in the 50th, but he wasn't integral to the story. He was just sort of there towards the end, and he did have a little bit of a narrative reason as to why he was there, of sorts, to tell Matt Smith's Doctor that, you know, Gallifrey is not lost anymore, and that it's sort of in our universe, and he could potentially try and find it now, sort of thing. But the thing was, like, yeah, like, loads of fans were annoyed that he wasn't in the 50th anniversary, and Mr. Paul McGann, and yet he was, in a way, he was in the 50th anniversary sort of celebration as a whole, and I think all the Doctors pretty much were. I mean, in a manner of speaking, I mean, the main three actors who are still with us who got screwed over really were Peter Davison, Colin Baker and Sylvester McCoy, but then again they all banded together and made the Five-ish Doctors in celebration of a little, like, sort of comedic skit that Peter Davison wrote and or directed, and he got a load of different people involved in that. So, you know, i.e. Colin Baker and Sylvester McCoy, but they just had a bit of a goof and a gaff, so, you know, even if they weren't in the 50th anniversary and that, so, but directly, they, you know, the 50th anniversary to me isn't just Day of the Doctor, it's, you know, an adventure in space and time, it's the Day of the Doctor, it's the light at the end, it's, you know, the 50th anniversary Big Finish audio version, it's Night of the Doctor, it's, you know, the Five-ish Doctors, it's just an amalgamation of just different stuff. It's not just Day of the Doctor, it's all the different bits and pieces the BBC and all Doctor Who team did at large to celebrate and commemorate 50 years of the show. And Night of the Doctor was one of them. Now, if, as I say, they hadn't have done Night of the Doctor, then yeah, sure, I think it would have made more, excuse me, logical sense to have had the 8th Doctor bridge that gap into the Time War and then regenerate into 9, but because of the Night of the Doctor and the way that that's done, structurally, he obviously regenerates in that, and now, obviously as well, Stephen Moffat's gone on record more than enough times to have stated that originally he wrote Day of the Doctor, a lot of it primarily around the 9th Doctor. Now, I think I would have preferred the 9th Doctor to have been in Day of the Doctor over Paul McGann, primarily just because he is the sort of first Doctor for me that I ever sort of grew up with and got me into the show. So one, nostalgia, two, you know, obviously it was the first Doctor for me to get into the show, nostalgia, you know, all that, but also as well as a kid, and even now looking back on it, it's like, you know, I never, when I watch series 1, I never think of the previous Doctor who fought in the Time War as being a different Doctor. And obviously I didn't at the time, because at the time I didn't know that there were more than one Doctor, you know. And even in retrospect, it's like, well, okay, cool, I'm fine with the whole War Doctor thing, I'm fine with the whole sort of, you know, John Hurt Doctor. But as I say, it's just, I don't particularly like the fact that in some respects it wasn't the 9th Doctor, because again, I never thought it would be anyone but him, but then I guess it kind of makes sense still, because you can still see the 9th Doctor as this Doctor who, as I say, still feels as though he did what he did, even though he didn't, kind of, because obviously the War Doctor doesn't end up doing, like, destroying both races, but he forgets that he has done that, or that he hasn't killed both, so it still makes sense narratively that the 9th Doctor would still feel bad about that. But yeah, I think I think, yeah, I think Paul McGann's Doctor has done enough just before the Time War, and there are the new Eighth Doctor Time War box sets coming out anyway that delve, Big Finish audio box sets that delve into his Doctor before. It's like a prequel on a prequel. It's before Night of the Doctor, leading into it. So he's still, so where is he? This guy, the Eighth Doctor, still is, caught up in the Time War. But the thing is, he tries, from what I grasp, and narratively what is shown in Night of the Doctor, is that he's very apprehensive to the war. And again, and the thing is, like, I saw an interview a while back of Paul McGann being all like, well, I like playing those characters. I think they're, that I'm fairly decent at doing at representing those characters, those sort of, that moral grey area of whether or not I can, whether or not, like, the moral grey area of whether fighting in a war is good or bad, or why you're doing it, and the emotional turmoil of and conflict of that, he finds more fascinating and interesting, and more of a fun project to do something like that than, say, over just being your stereotypical down the line, sort of straight down the line, sort of, I'm a soldier, I need to, pick up a gun and kill people sort of thing, and that. So, on that front, it would make sense that he might not potentially like to be in the 50th anniversary, i.e. Day of the Doctor, because, the War Doctor is that sort of more, sort of straight down the line, I fought in the Time War sort of thing, whereas, again, the Eighth Doctor is more of a lover, not a fighter, and all apprehensive to the Time War. So, as much as I appreciate why people would love for Paul McGann's Doctor to have been in Day of the Doctor and or been in the Time War, I think you'd be missing the whole point of his character and the characterization of that incarnation of the Doctor, because again, he's apprehensive to it. He is the Doctor. The fundamental idea of the War Doctor was that he isn't the Doctor, because he, is so fundamentally gone and, blood-soaked in Time Lord and or Dalek blood that, he can't even call himself the Doctor or deal with people calling him the Doctor, because he just doesn't feel like he is the Doctor anymore. Because again, the whole moral compass of the Doctor is to never be cruel, never be cowardly, and all this and that, and yet the War Doctor was all of those, or not all of those things, and so in not being those things, he isn't the Doctor, and whereas McGann is, though. And yeah, sure, you could argue maybe we see him be the Doctor at the beginning of the Time War and or before sort of Night of the Doctor, and then we see him in Day of the Doctor, and then he sort of becomes the not-so-Doctor-like person and descends into this sort of grungy, warrior, and then regenerates into the Ninth Doctor. But, I don't know, I think the Eighth Doctor's timeline's long enough anyway, going from 1996 TV movie to Night of the Doctor. You've got a shit ton of Big Finish audios, and they're still releasing them now, so he's got more than enough content, and there's more than enough stories with his Doctor, and I think it's more interesting to see a flawed hero that you relate to because they're flawed, and or see this sort of brilliant, sort of charismatic, dynamic hero who's amazing. And if Ace as a character is the blueprint for the modern companion, then surely Paul McGann is the exact same, but for the Doctor. He is the archetype and or blueprints for the modern Doctor. He's youthful, he's charming, he's dashing, he's this bit of a romanticist, and that in the 1996 TV movie. And although that isn't all of that isn't too appealing to me, he still has this scientific know-how and the intellect as well, and this childlike curiosity to be an adventurer like some of the older Doctors prior to him, and that in the Big Finish audios. but then to see him, as I say, like have to face this tremendously big sort of cataclysmic, you know, harsh reality of the Time War crash and, you know, sort of crash down upon him, and see how he struggles to deal with it and the ramifications of it, you know, because again, in Night of the Doctor, he simply wants to save one person's life, and they deny that because they'd rather die than have him save them, even though he states, I'm not a Dalek, I'm a Time Lord, and this and that. And then she's like, well, who can tell the difference anymore? But but I'm one of the nice ones, you know. It's highlighting the fact that, you know, the lines have been blurred so much in the Time War between, you know, are the Daleks as bad as the Time Lords? Are the Time Lords worse? Do you know what I mean? And there's so much sort of grey moral ambiguity, and sort of everyone gets hit into the crosshairs. And again, like Dark Eyes, that's, you know, spoiler alert here if you haven't heard the first box set, but, you know, the Eighth Doctor just wants to get perspective on all of it, and he's sick of losing people, you know. He's this hopeful, you know, hopeful but flawed person who seems to, whenever anyone gets encountered with him, primarily his companions, they always get, you know, sort of put into the crosshairs of the adventures, you know, and the dangerous life he leads, but he doesn't take on the same damage as they do, you know, and that. So, and again, you sort of see him in the latter end of his tenure anyway, or era, you see him somewhat delve into the Time War a bit, but not completely, but it's still there. So to say that, oh, he should have been in the 50th, I think is a bit much personally. I mean, obviously I would have loved to see him on screen alongside two of the modern Doctors, but I would have also seen all three of the modern series Doctors with each other, see how they would have all, you know, sort of bounced off each other in terms of their characterization, you know, how Chris Eccleston's so different to both David Tennant and Matt Smith's Doctors, you know, as is Paul McGann. But I don't know, I'm not annoyed that he's not in the Time War and that. So should the Eighth Doctor be in the Time War? Well, no, but also he sort of is, you know. He's just apprehensive as a character, you know, and he doesn't fully embrace it up until he has to, because he has no choice unless he wants more people to die and that. So he kind of he kind of is anyway, because again, all of the Doctors are the same person, and if so, then technically the War Doctor is still the Doctor, inverted commas, you know, even if he sort of doesn't take on the mantelpiece and that sort of moral code and that, or the title that embodies that code as well, because again, he does things that he doesn't feel like the Doctor would. But yeah, these are just my thoughts on should the Eighth Doctor have been in the Time War. Thanks for watching, comment, rate and subscribe.